The morning sun filtered softly through the lace curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room where Emily sat, cradling a cup of tea. The house felt empty now, hollowed out by the absence of her mother. The faint scent of lavender, Mom's favorite, still lingered, and Emily found herself lingering on the small, quiet details, the faded photograph of the three of them on the porch swing, the chipped teacup she used every afternoon. This house had been her sanctuary, a place of memory and love, and now it was shadowed by loss. A sharp ring of the phone broke her reverie. Emily glanced at the screen, frowning. It was Rachel. Her sister's name sparked an uneasy tension in her chest. They hadn't spoken much since the funeral. Grief had brought its own strange distance between them. "Hello," Emily answered cautiously. Hi, we need to talk." Rachel's voice was bright, almost too cheerful, and Emily immediately sensed the undercurrent of demand lurking beneath it. "What's going on, Rachel?" Emily asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. I need half of Mom's inheritance," Rachel blurted. There was a pause, then she added, "for my wedding. It's kind of expensive. Napa, $75,000, but it's going to be perfect, and I really can't do it without your help." Emily froze, her grip tightening around the teacup, half of her mother's estate for a wedding. Her mind raced through the years, recalling all the times Rachel had demanded attention, money, and indulgence. Always for herself, never a thought for Emily, or for Mom for that matter. "Rachel," Emily's voice was quiet but firm. "You can't just take half of Mom's inheritance for your wedding. That's not what she wanted, and it's not fair." "It's just money, Em," Rachel snapped, as if the words themselves carried no weight. "Mom wouldn't have wanted me to struggle, would she? I mean, come on. You have your life, don't be selfish." Emily's chest tightened. She could feel her heart clenching against the betrayal. This wasn't just about money. It was about audacity, about a lifetime of selfishness boiled down into one audacious demand. Memories of childhood rose unbidden. Rachel grabbing the last slice of cake, always getting what she wanted, leaving Emily to settle for scraps. And now, even in the shadow of their mother's death, the pattern continued. "I won't give it to you," Emily said finally, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "Mom worked hard for that money for both of us. You're asking me to betray her memory for a party." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Rachel laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. "Fine, suit yourself. But don't be surprised if I see you in court, Em." The line went dead before Emily could respond. She sank back into the sofa, shaking. Part of her wanted to cry, another part wanted to scream. The betrayal cut deeper than she expected, closer to the bone than any argument over money should. Rachel, her own sister, had turned her grief into leverage, and that thought alone left Emily with a cold, simmering resolve. She stared at the photograph on the mantel, the three of them smiling in a sunlit garden years ago. Mom would have been heartbroken, but Emily knew one thing. She wouldn't let Rachel take what wasn't hers. Not for a wedding, not for anything. And if Rachel thought she could win, she had another thing coming. The morning Emily received the official notice, the paper seemed to burn in her hands. Rachel had actually filed a lawsuit. Her demands weren't just words anymore. They were legal threats, sealed and formal, with her name stamped in bold letters across the top. Emily sank into the armchair, heart pounding, unable to believe that her own sister had crossed this line. Her lawyer, a calm, practical woman named Claire, tried to keep her grounded. "Emily, it's unfortunate, but it's not uncommon. These things happen when estates are involved, especially between siblings. You need to be methodical. Emotional responses can be used against you in court." And methodical. Emily repeated the word silently, tasting it like medicine. Methodical. But all she could feel was the raw sting of betrayal. Her chest tightened, and her mind refused to calm. The woman she had grown up with shared secrets, late night giggles, whispered dreams, had now cast her as an enemy. Emily spent days revisiting their childhood, memories twisting with the knowledge of Rachel's current greed. She remembered how Rachel had once convinced their mother to buy her a designer dress for a school dance, while Emily wore a hand-me-down she didn't mind but had secretly resented. She remembered birthdays when Rachel demanded more than her share of attention, more than her share of gifts, and everyone had caved to avoid conflict. It was as if history had repeated itself, only now it carried the weight of legal action. And yet, as the initial shock faded, something inside Emily shifted. She wasn't helpless. She wouldn't allow Rachel to rewrite their mother's legacy for a wedding she didn't deserve. Claire advised Emily to document everything: financial records, texts, emails, even social media posts that demonstrated Rachel's spending habits and lifestyle. Emily dove into the task, discovering a new sense of purpose. Each receipt Rachel had posted on Instagram for luxury handbags or spontaneous trips became a tiny weapon. Every careless post about her budget challenges, while planning her Napa wedding, strengthened Emily's resolve. Even as the lawsuit loomed, Emily found solace in small, deliberate acts. She returned to the house, lingering in rooms her mother had loved, touching the edges of quilts she had sewn, inhaling the scent of old books and Mom's lavender oil. In those moments, she felt anchored. Mom's voice, gentle yet firm, echoed in her mind. "Do what's right, Emily. Always what's right, even if it's hard." The days stretched into weeks. Rachel's legal team sent letters, threatening motions, deadlines, and court dates. Emily's friends tried to offer advice, some urging her to settle to avoid the drama, but Emily couldn't. She had promised herself she wouldn't give in. Not to money, not to manipulation, not to betrayal. A quiet determination began to bloom, almost like a secret companion. Emily realized she could fight this battle not just with truth, but with strategy. She began to quietly trace Rachel's spending history, her lavish trips, her careless indulgences. Each discovery added a layer to her plan. If Rachel wanted war, Emily would respond, not with anger, but with carefully measured truth. And somewhere in the shadows of her grief, Emily felt something unfamiliar but powerful. Hope. The hope that justice, though slow and painful, could prevail. The hope that betrayal, no matter how deep, could be met with wisdom and resolve. As she sat at the kitchen table, piles of documents around her, Emily whispered to herself, "I'll make sure Mom's legacy is safe, and I'll make sure Rachel can't touch it." The storm was coming, and Emily was ready. Emily sat at her desk late at night, the house quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Around her, stacks of documents, bank statements, and screenshots of Rachel's social media posts formed a makeshift arsenal. Every detail of Rachel's spending, every impulsive indulgence, every boastful claim about her lavish Napa wedding became ammunition. Emily had spent weeks gathering evidence, not out of spite, but out of a sense of justice. It was a strange feeling, plotting revenge against someone you once called a sister. Part of her ached for the memories they shared, giggling over ice cream cones in the park, whispering secrets in the dark, promising to always protect one another. But those memories were now overlaid with betrayal, selfishness, and entitlement, and Emily realized that protecting her mother's legacy meant exposing Rachel's recklessness for all to see. The first step was subtle. Emily began by quietly showing her lawyer evidence of Rachel's financial irresponsibility. Credit card debts she had neglected, extravagant purchases she had concealed, even a loan she had taken out without informing family members. Each piece painted a portrait of Rachel as someone motivated purely by self-interest, with little regard for fairness or consequence. Next came the social exposure. Emily reached out to friends and distant relatives who had blindly supported Rachel, sharing discreet snapshots of her behavior. She wasn't cruel, she was honest. The narratives Rachel had spun about being financially responsible and deserving crumbled under the weight of truth. Slowly, quietly, people began to question her character. Invitations dwindled, sympathy waned, her support network shrank without Emily lifting a finger in anger. Even so, Emily didn't celebrate. The process was bittersweet, a cocktail of satisfaction and sorrow. Every revelation was a small victory, yes, but it reminded her of the sister she had lost, the trust that had been shattered. She spent evenings in the garden, wandering among her mother's roses, reflecting on how betrayal could wound so deeply, and yet, how it could awaken unexpected strength. The turning point came during a mediation meeting. Rachel walked in, confident, flawless in her designer dress. expecting intimidation to work its usual magic. But Emily remained calm. She presented the documents methodically, letting the evidence speak for itself. She didn't shout, she didn't beg. She didn't even glance at Rachel with anger. She simply laid out the truth, one undeniable fact at a time. By the end of the session, the air was thick with tension. Rachel's eyes darted nervously, her usual arrogance faltering. The mediator raised an eyebrow at several of the financial inconsistencies Emily had uncovered. Rachel's confident smirk slipped, replaced by a flicker of fear. For the first time, Emily saw vulnerability in her sister, the recognition that she could no longer control the narrative. That night, Emily allowed herself a quiet, private sense of satisfaction. She didn't gloat. She didn't dance in Rachel's failure. She simply felt a calm, steady certainty. Justice, measured and patient, had a beauty all its own. As Emily placed another photograph of her mother on the mantel, she whispered softly, "We're safe now, Mom. I'll protect what you left us, and I'll do it with honor." For the first time in weeks, she slept without anxiety pressing against her chest, knowing the storm of betrayal had begun to abate, and that she had grown stronger in the process. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, paper, and tension. Emily adjusted her blazer, her hands steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. After weeks of preparation, late nights of combing through documents, and quiet nights of reflection in her mother's garden, the moment had finally arrived. This was more than a legal battle. It was the culmination of grief, betrayal, and the moral responsibility Emily had carried since Mom's passing. Rachel entered the room like a queen entering her court, perfectly coiffed and radiating self-confidence. But Emily noticed it immediately, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. For all her bravado, Rachel was now vulnerable, exposed. Every mismanaged account, every impulsive purchase, every boastful post about her wedding had been meticulously documented, and Emily was ready to let the evidence speak. When the hearing began, Emily's lawyer laid out the case calmly and methodically. Emily watched Rachel's face tighten as the financial records were presented, each detail eroding her sister's credibility. Emails revealed requests for money that were not only unreasonable but also manipulative, designed to coerce Emily into compliance. Texts and social media posts painted a portrait of someone more interested in extravagance than family, more concerned with appearances than integrity. Rachel tried to interject, to spin her narrative of entitlement and need, but the evidence was undeniable. Every claim she made crumbled under scrutiny, leaving her defensive and isolated. Emily felt a strange combination of sorrow and satisfaction, sorrow for the sister she had lost, satisfaction in knowing that truth and integrity had finally prevailed. When the judge rendered the verdict, Emily felt a wave of relief and quiet triumph wash over her. The inheritance was legally hers, and Rachel's claims were dismissed. But the victory was not just about money. It was about the legacy of their mother, about justice, and about reclaiming peace from the chaos Rachel had brought into their lives. The aftermath was surreal. Rachel retreated from family gatherings. Her influence diminished as friends and relatives reevaluated her character. She was no longer the sister everyone admired or indulged. Her reputation had been quietly, irreversibly altered. Meanwhile, Emily felt a freedom she hadn't known since childhood, a sense that she could finally honor her mother's memory without the shadow of greed looming over her. In the following weeks, Emily invested herself in meaningful ways. She used part of the inheritance to restore the family home, adding touches that reminded her of Mom's warmth, painting the walls in soft pastels, planting a garden filled with roses and lavender, and creating spaces for friends and family to gather. She also contributed to local charities Mom had supported, feeling a connection to her mother in each act of kindness. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Emily hosted a small family gathering. It wasn't a Napa wedding, it wasn't lavish or expensive, but it was full of laughter, love, and remembrance. She raised a glass to Mom, feeling her presence in every smile, every shared story, every quiet moment of gratitude. Rachel was absent, as expected, and Emily felt neither bitterness nor joy in her absence, only clarity. Emily realized, finally, that the truest inheritance was not money, not grand celebrations, not fleeting indulgence. It was the love they had shared, the lessons Mom had taught, and the strength Emily had found within herself. She smiled softly, the weight of betrayal lifted, knowing that she had honored her mother, protected her legacy, and emerged stronger than she ever imagined. For the first time in months, Emily felt at peace. The storm had passed, and she was ready to step into a future built on integrity, love, and quiet strength, untouched by greed, betrayal, or regret.